Good evening. This is your host, Howard Kravitz. Welcome to episode 142 of the HHH Racing Podcast. I've been doing this podcast for almost a year and a half, and especially to those of you that are brand new to the show, I'm going to start today's 142nd episode in a way that I have never done before. The events of today that happened in Texas um, hits home with me as a 25-year high school educator. And what I would ask you all to do is allow me to speak for just 2 or 3 minutes about what happened today. Um, I'm not going to be getting into politics. We're not going to talk about laws that should or shouldn't be changed. There are other podcasts for that. This is a horse racing podcast. That being said, if I don't say something, I feel like I'm complicit into this horrible epidemic that we have in this country right now. So allow me to speak for a few minutes. I'll bring on my co-hosts. They will have the opportunity to say something if they like. And then we will talk about what I was hoping we'd talk about tonight, which is a very cool new logo for the podcast, of which my esteemed co-hosts are part of, Pete and Paul, and about the Preakness, and to take your questions, because I care very much what you have to say, whether you are watching live tonight or whether you'll be listening at home later, and I want to hear all your horse racing questions. But to be very honest, that's just not on my mind right now. Let me just say this. Earlier today when I was at school, I'm a high school math teacher. I've been a teacher for 25 years. I saw some students try to get into our building into an entrance they're not supposed to. And some other students opened the door for them. Nothing happened. Everything was fine. But they were doing what they weren't supposed to do. And coincidentally, and this was before the events of what happened today in Texas, I immediately went to, that's unsafe. That's not good. Someone could come into our school if our students are doing that illegally. There are no words to what happened in Texas today. It's horrific. It's horrible. It's a parent's worst nightmare. And it's continuing on and on and on and on. And if those of you at home don't want to hear me talk for a few minutes and you rather turn off the video, or if you're listening to this later, that's fine. I can accept losing a few viewers for tonight's pod. I frankly don't care. This has to be said, and it has to be discussed, whether it's a horse racing podcast, a podcast about cooking, basket weaving. I feel the need that I say something. We have to change. This country has to change one way or another. And I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, in the middle, don't care about politics, hate everyone that's in the Senate and government. I respect everyone. That's the way I was raised. Anyone that's seen this podcast knows that I respect everyone's opinions, whether I completely agree or disagree, and I will continue to do so. But one thing is for damn sure. This cannot continue to happen. We can't continue to have school shootings. And the answer is not, let's just homeschool everyone. That's not the answer. And I'm sure many of you listening tonight have a lot of great thoughts and ideas and solutions, and we are not going to talk about those again. That's not what this podcast is about. All I want to say is I'm hoping and praying sometime in my lifetime that this country can come to their freaking senses and we can have common sense legislation, whatever that may be. Does it have to be every gun should be legal to we have to take all the guns away? Does it have to be that extreme? Does it have to be death penalty for everyone to let's just have probation for people? Can't we come to some type of common sense laws to protect our children? It's not about us. It's not about the adults. It's about the kids. And I've been teaching for 25 years. And I would say 80 to 90% of the kids that I have in my classes that are screwed up either emotionally, educationally, whatever, the vast, vast majority are because of dumbass adults and parents. And if you're a parent, I'm not criticizing you. The majority of parents are awesome and fantastic. But as usual, it's the adults that F up the kids. And the kids bear the brunt of it. And today, it wasn't just only kids, it was also a teacher. And it could be me the next time. It could be your kids. It could be your grandkids. It could be someone you love. So hug and kiss your children, your grandchildren. Hold them close tonight. Tell them you love them, and just pray that nothing happens because we need to change in this country. Otherwise, I don't know what the hell we're doing. That's all I want to say. I'm going to bring on my esteemed co-hosts right now, Paul Halloran, Pete Visco, and also we are joined tonight by Kyle Roscoe. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me tonight on what's really a pretty tough day for a lot of people. Paul, I just want to tell those of you at home might not know everything about our co-hosts here. Paul works in public relations, and Paul, you have school districts that are your employers. I can only imagine this situation would be your worst possible nightmare, short of involving your own children back in the day. Pete, I know you have a son that is the same age as some of the kids that were involved in the shooting today. And Kyle, you're probably the first generation of people that from day one in kindergarten or first grade had active shooter drills just from the very start. I can't even imagine what that was like. So, gentlemen, I'm going to let you say something or say nothing. You know that I love you guys and respect you guys either way because, again, I don't want to get into, we could have a whole 5 hour conversation about how we need to change things in this country, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. Paul, thanks for joining us tonight. The floor is yours for a minute if you'd like to say anything.
Yeah, sure, Howard. Thank you. Very well put by you. And obviously, I think you could probably relate to it better than the rest of us being in a classroom. I mean, I've spent my share of time in school buildings, not a lot, but I do work with some districts. And, I suspect that probably tonight or tomorrow I'll be drafting some type of communication for my superintendents. Every superintendent is going to feel obligated to send something home. But frankly, what do you say? To your point, what do you say? What do you say that hasn't been said? This takes us all the way back to Newtown, Connecticut. And what are we thankful that the ones in between Newtown and now, which have been dozens, if not hundreds, haven't been quote as bad. And I won't get political either, Howard, but I will say this: we talk about odds on this show every week, every show, right? Talk about odds, how to beat the odds, how to better our odds, how to get value. I'm going to talk later on about me being very upset about not maximizing the value on early voting, whom you and I loved, Howard. But it would just seem to me that if we know, God forbid, if someone is intent on wreaking that type of havoc, it is virtually unpreventable. I think we know that. It's been proven, okay? Then why wouldn't we want to at least better the odds that if there were fewer opportunities to wreak that type of havoc, i.e., with that type of machinery, then wouldn't that at least increase the odds? And that is a bare minimum, a bare minimum. But if we're talking about odds and we're talking about having something be virtually unpreventable, whether it's a school building, a movie theater, a subway, you name it, then as a minimum, shouldn't we at least try to increase the odds by decreasing the opportunities? And I'll leave it at that.
My only response to that, and again, I don't have to give my political views, but I'll just be very honest with everyone at home. I'm really more in the middle. Sometimes I lean left, sometimes I lean right. It really depends on how I feel about certain things. But I did hear someone today say, why strengthen gun laws when those criminals are just going to break the rules anyway? So then why even have stoplights? Why have any laws at all then if that's how we're gonna live our lives? To me, that's just, again, I don't mean to throw my opinions on people, but that just seems completely asinine, that thought. Pete, I hope you don't mind me just bringing up your son. I know, I'm sure, he's a great kid, and I got to be honest, as I was thinking about the beginning of the show, I thought about your son, Pete, because he's about the age of the oldest kids that were in that school. I can't even imagine um, how you or other people would have felt, especially parents of kids who are, that age.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you get to the point where you try not to think about it because you can really get consumed by it too much, and
Yeah.
you have to compartmentalize as much as possible. And it's one of those things where, yeah, he'll come home or we'll get an email and say they're doing a drill, quote unquote, today,
Yeah.
and it's one of those. And it's not like we tell him everything, but we tell him enough to know. And you just cross your fingers and hope that nothing happens where you are, and you're sad for the people where it does. But I mean, again, you can only do so much. So I try not to get too bogged down in the things that I can't control, because then you'll just be miserable every day. So I don't want to bring myself down, bring my family down, or bring everyone else down. So I try and just, you plug away and, keep your fingers crossed.
Kyle, and by the way, those are wondering, where's Jim? Has Jim officially been kicked off the show? No, for everyone that knows, we love Jim. Jim has had some family obligations with his daughter who moved out of the state for the last week or two. So Jim Pilares will be back on this show. No, Kyle did not permanently replace Jim. We all love Jim. We'll have Jim back on. Kyle, I don't know if you'd like to say anything, but you're in the unique circumstance, like I said, of being much younger than the three of us. Thankfully for you, um, you lived in a different generation, a different time. Um, were you thinking about anything today? Do you want to comment on anything at all?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head when you were first, like I said, very well spoken from you at the start. And yeah, I mean, yeah, ever since I was 5, 6 years old, I've been trained in what we called lockdown drills, where everyone goes in the corner and stay out farthest away from the doors. And I mean, it's been a part of my life for, like you said, my whole life. So I mean, it's sad to know that I don't know anything different, and it's like you said, whatever way it has to go, and definitely something has to be changed for sure.
Yeah, I actually remember very well the first active shooter drill as a teacher. And I mean, you're prepped about it. And then one particular time, this was a mistake, but police came through the hallways and actually like sort of banged down the doors to like simulate, but they didn't give us a heads up on that. And I had a few kids this high school. I had a few kids that were upset. I mean, they were crying, and I felt
Mhm.
awful. They knew it was a drill, but that they weren't just that
Right.
drill trauma.
Yeah, we had that as
Uh,
well one year.
I can't imagine. Anyway, again, we're gonna talk about the Preakness, a lot of cool stuff tonight. But guys, I have this very small platform. We have this very small platform, and as a school teacher, especially, who cares a lot about kids, and we all do, I had to say something tonight. So, um, thank you for participating in our short discussion. Because in the long run, who gives an F about which horse should have gotten the lead or which? I mean, all that matters is your health and your family. I mean, that's all that really matters in the end. I think I would doubt anyone would disagree with that. At the bottom of the screen, and again, thanks to all of viewers who are watching tonight. On the bottom of the screen, you can see we have a live chat podcast next Thursday. This Thursday, we're gonna have Billy Koch from the West Coast of Little Red Feather Racing. Very excited to have him on. He's a great guy, great personality. They've had a lot of success, and we're gonna be handicapping Santa Anita. To be honest, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure exactly what we're gonna be talking about because they have some major stake races Sunday and especially Monday Memorial Day. But I don't know if the entries are gonna be coming out soon enough. So if they don't come out, we'll be talking about the Saturday races at Santa Anita for sure. And Pete, also, I just wanted to show, if you don't mind, I'm just going to show just the first slide of something we talked about. Pete's going to just very briefly talk about something that our race day blog uh, subscribers will be receiving very soon. So, as if you need more reason to subscribe to our fantastic race day blog, there it is at the bottom of the screen. Pete Visco has volunteered to do a little project for me and you folks who will be part of the Race Day blog only. So, Pete, we teased this last week. Why don't you just go ahead and tell people what we're going to be doing, and I'll just show a little snippet of what it's going to look like.
Yeah, sure. So last week we talked a little bit about doing something, whether it was in video form or in sort of paper email form, regarding the statistics. So a lot of times we'll talk about the statistics for a certain horse, whether it's a trainer, whatever the case may be. So a lot of times that could be a little dry when we're on the video and you can't really get into all the weeds. So one of the things we're going to do, like Howard said, is add this. So what I'll do each week is at least the pick five, say, if we're doing a pick five on the show, and then if there's another track that Howard is doing in the blog, we're still figuring it out, then I'll provide a separate document, which Howard will include with the Race Day blog email, which would just lay out whatever stats I dug up for that race for those particular horses. Now, again, this isn't going to be every stat you could possibly come up with. This isn't us saying, hey, this stat, look at this horse. This horse has a really bad stat. You shouldn't bet it. This is just information. It's data points. And that's the way sort of I handicap. So it's just another little benefit we're going to give from the Race Day blog. We're going to send this out. If you guys like it, great. Hopefully we get a good response. If you don't like it and you don't care that much, fine. Again, you don't have to read it. It's going to be coming anyway, most likely. So we really appreciate your feedback, though. So that'll be it. And if you have any questions once it comes out, then we can talk about it maybe on next week's pod.
I also want to let the viewers know that I'm going to be sending out a survey this week. It's just 15 questions. It's very short. It'll take you 10 minutes at the most. And because of our new logos and a new look, which I know you got a little sneak peek before the show, and maybe you can see a little bit at the top of the screen when I shift things around. Merch is in the works. HHH Racing Podcast, and all you guys will be getting some free merch for
now
sure.
We're talking. Now we're
okay.
talking.
Finally, that's the only reason why we
finally.
joined.
Pete, this is finally going to pay
That's
off.
the only reason why we joined, right, Paul? That's what we talked about.
We've had the numbers skyrocket.
Once I get a T-shirt, I'm out of here.
Yeah, the merch and the subscriber gang. That's it.
There you go. I'll be sending out a survey, and if you fill out your name on the survey at a certain spot, you at home will have a chance to get some free merch as well. So look for the survey. We'd greatly appreciate, all four of us, and Jim, all five of us, really appreciate if you just take a short amount of time to fill out the survey, because I care about making the show the best it can be. We have a few quick comments, guys. Let's see what we got here. Ralph actually gave me the name. He knows a guy in New Jersey. Ralph, I'm not making any promises because I might want to use someone local, but Ralph, I do have your information of your guy. Ralph was kind enough to send me information about someone that does, T-shirts and pens and trinkets and whatnot. So thank you for that, Ralph. Gemini likes the idea, Pete. Awesome. Thanks. And Ralph also likes that idea as well. So here's what I need, folks. We're going to talk about the Preakness right now for about 10 minutes. That's it. And then starting at 8:30 Eastern, from then on, we're going to deep dive into your questions. If you have any questions at all about the Preakness, about anything in horse racing that you'd like us to answer, if you have a question, you want to know a little more about Pete or Paul or Kyle, anything within reason, of course, that they are willing to share about themselves. But I want to focus really more on horse racing. We love to hear from you. Please comment in the live chat. And again, we're planning on ending approximately 9 o'clock Eastern this evening. We might go earlier, we might go later. Depends on the input. Guys, let's talk about the Preakness. Preakness Stakes. Wow. This Triple Crown has been cray-cray, as the Kardashians, I think, say. That's what the kids say. I don't know.
Well, let's not say that again on the show.
That's what listen, I've heard. Okay. Anyway, Kyle's like, he didn't just say that, did he?
Kyle's camera's gonna.
I might need to take Kyle off the screen. I don't know if he can contain himself.
Yeah.
We just lost 5, Pete. We just lost 5.
What are you talking about? I'm keeping it real here. We just gained 5 people.
Keep it real.
The Triple Crown's been nuts. Let's go ahead and bring up the PPs here and bring up the replay of the Preakness. I'm going to go full screen. We're going to show the Preakness. We're going to stop and start a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys on screen. We all know the result, of course. Early voting wins at 5.7 to 1. Wow. And I know the odds are something that we all want to talk about. Of course, Epicenter was second with what some people think was an interesting ride. Let's just say Creative Minister finished third, Brian Hernandez. Let's talk about the start of this race, guys. I'm going to go ahead and bring it on screen here. We're going to do it without the sound. What I struck right away, I think really what most people were surprised were right away, and Paul, I'll let you talk first, is of course Epicenter was the 8. He didn't break great, but he didn't break badly. Let me freeze it right here. And Paul, let me ask you this question. Do you put any blame on Rosario at all for the start of this race? Was he not aggressive enough, or just the horse just was a touch flatter than he had been at the start of his recent efforts?
I think all of the above, Howard. After watching it live, I thought it was a pretty bad ride. But then when I watched replays, especially the overhead, I think we can't discount the fact that the horse was running on 2 weeks rest. A lot of horses don't come back for that reason. He might not have been that sharp early on. They taught him to rate in Louisiana and Kentucky, and boy, he learned his lessons well. But the thing that struck me, of course, I'm focused on early voting, Howard, and I'm watching it in my living room, having gotten home. Run it just a little more, Howard, to almost when they're into the turn. That's Armagnac. And right about here, I don't want to jinx myself, but and I never think like this. I am thinking I cannot come up with a scenario where early voting loses this race.
I do have scenarios that he can lose, but as someone who had a win bet on early voting, I said I could not ask for a better situation. This is an ultimate situation, going slow, sitting right outside Armagnac. And by the way, Paul, I think we should mention this little move right here by Jose Ortiz coming up, where he looks to his right. He sees no one there. He doesn't want to be right there to get into the 2-path. Was a very subtle but important move, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think Epicenter is a great horse, and he ran very well again. He's not beating this horse from 5 lengths back. I don't care if there's a mile and a 16th to go or not. So, I liked it, having bet early voting like you did. And Rosario did, I guess, what he's supposed to do after that. He got to the rail and saved ground. And, he was running late, and Jose wanted to make sure he didn't get there, and he cut over. But he was, in my opinion, he was no threat to win the race from there. And I will take the 5-1. We can talk about the every once in a while we're reminded that we have a chance, even if we don't win that much, Pete. We have a chance with this being a pari-mutuel game, because there were people who went to their windows or their ADW and said, please give me Fenwick to win. So that means the rest of us have a chance.
We'll talk about the odds. I don't know if you guys saw this on Twitter. I found this fascinating. If those of you at home have never seen this before, this is amazing. This is Epicenter. So Joel Rosario had a camera on Epicenter, because I know there were a bunch of people, whether they were bitter or whatever. I know Ralph is on the, makes a comment that he thought Epicenter got a bad ride. Ralph, I hear you. Raymond, by the way, thanks for joining the show. Pete, I'm going to let you talk about this. I don't know if Pete, have you seen this video? Do you know what we're about to see? Because I thought this was pretty cool.
No, I don't think I saw the Epicenter one. I thought I just saw the early voting one. So
this is Epicenter, and watch what happens to him, because I think this is exact what this is about. So he breaks okay. Now, what I was a little surprised, first of all, is I didn't think there's a chance in hell that Skippy Longstocking, Pete, would actually outbreak Epicenter. I mean, I was floored by that. First of all, I thought Epicenter was much faster early, number one, anyway. And number two, I thought Skippy Longstocking would be taking back and coming from behind. But watch what happens. You see Armagnac. This is a fascinating view. There's Armagnac's sons, right? Now, on his left here, right here, this is Happy Jack. This is Happy Jack right here. And watch, and this is simplification. So if people want to blame Rosario, that's fine, but watch what happens. I'll just run it through. I mean, you know what happened in the race, but to see it from this view, wow. I mean, what is he supposed to do there? I mean, Pete, he clearly gets shut off. And what I didn't really notice during the race, the replays, I think this was more Happy Jack coming over. I thought it was simplification. To me, this is more, it's really both
Skippy,
of them.
Skippy Longstocking.
Skippy Longstocking.
Yeah, simplification was on the rail, was the one.
No, the 6. I'm talking about the 6, guys.
No, simplification was the one.
The 6 is Happy
Jack.
Jack.
The 9 is outside.
Right. Did I say simplification?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a bunch
Oh,
of
I'm
couple-
sorry. I meant Happy Jack. My bad. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. But I mean, clearly, Pete. I mean, how do you blame Rosario for that?
Well,
That particular.
I don't think you can blame Rosario for that. I think you can blame him potentially. It's hard to tell with a horse if he. So he had a split second to hit that hole between them. So I don't. It's hard to tell unless you're on the horse to know if he had enough out of the gate to hit that hole. My argument, I thought Paul sort of spoke everything that I said exactly. Was my argument was try and hit that hole quicker, try and get yourself in position, especially the way the track was playing that day. The track was playing pure speed. So, like Paul said, if he's back there, it's not like Epicenter's a monster closer. So he's back there, the way the track was playing, the race was over. I mean, I was a little dead by this point. I had a little tiny something to Epicenter, so I was rooting for him. But at that point, I was like, oh, this, like Paul said, this race is over. Early voting, if he can't win this, or I thought Secret Oath had a shot at that point if she was good enough. But other than that, I thought Epicenter was done only because when they hit the backside, he never really tried to make up ground. Like once you get to the rail, great. You save ground on the turn a little bit. You get in position. I thought he should have been more aggressive too on the backside, trying to get closer. Now, again, maybe there was horses in front of him, but I mean, that's your job. Your job is to sort of get in position, not to just sit back. And Rosario, if it wasn't him, who he's known for, this happens a lot. He has some rides. He's an awesome rider, obviously, but he has some rides where when he gets in the back a little bit, he gets a little passive. He's not as aggressive as maybe he should be. And this sort of thing happens, and he sometimes takes his horses out of the race. And I thought that's exactly what happened. And he made the move too late. He had a horse. Again, I don't know if he would have won, but he had a horse and he had opportunities. I just didn't think he took them.
Well, Pete, I think this is. I mean, I do agree with you to some extent, but I don't know where he could have gone on the inside to rush up. Plus, I'm not sure the rush up move really works well. So I'm going to disagree with you slightly, but that's why we have we have these conversations.
He wasn't winning at all. I mean, if you have a horse who's just trying to get in the money, great. If you have a horse that you think could win this race, you do more with it. He wasn't going because there was no. My only argument would be there was no chance he could win, like Paul said, from where he was. So you basically at this point you can't win the race the way the track was playing, and with a horse like Early Voting chasing,
Sure.
who was dead speed. I mean, there was so much talk about can Early Voting rate. This is like a workout, rating behind a horse you can fly by at any point whenever you're ready. So I don't even think this proved that much that Early Voting can necessarily rate. He can rate behind, cheap speed and garbage speed. So that was my only concern. And I was yelling at TV the whole race, basically. So
Kyle, I want you to address this at the bottom, Kyle, because I've seen Raymond, I really appreciate your comment, and I'm glad you joined the show. But Raymond, I gotta say, I couldn't disagree more. Kyle, I've seen this narrative on Twitter that there was some kind of nefarious activity going on with the IRAD who was on Armagnac or whatever. I mean, what was your take on the the first quarter of this race, Kyle, in general?
I mean, just my first thought is Irad's not going to take a mount if he doesn't think. Plus, Armagnac, the only way he wins is what he's doing right now. And he got out to a slow pace. He had 24-1 through the opening quarter, rushed up a little bit with 47-2. But I mean, and then to Paul and Pete's point earlier, right at this half mile point, this is when I knew Early Voting couldn't lose, in my opinion. If he was the horse everyone was touting him as, and how I believe too, because I was alive to doubles and pick threes, to only Early Voting, going that slow of a pace, and if Epicenter closes and beats me there, then he easily deserves to be, the 8-5 favorite in this race. But I could not disagree more with the rabbit point. Like I said, and everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and I'm not gonna try and destroy someone for their own opinion. But with someone with the IRAD, he's not gonna run a race if he doesn't think he's gonna win like that. I mean, then like I said, Armagnac's the only way he's gonna win is going out to the lead like that.
I agree, and Armagnac's not the one that cut off Epicenter. If you want to be upset on the jocks of the 6 and the 9. That clearly squeezed the 8. Pete, now right here, Epicenter's right here, and we're just gonna take a few more minutes, guys. Would you have liked to see an Epicenter make this early move, or did you want to see him make this early move sooner once he realized that he was going to be too far back on the first turn? So, Pete, I'm just trying to understand where you wanted Rosario to make that earlier move? At what point of the race would you like to see him be more aggressive? I guess.
I mean, I would have just liked to ease his way forward there because they figured the only way he was going to win that race was to be sort of when they hit the turn, he had to be sort of in the third, and like third, not too far off. I mean, look right here.
But where's he going to go, Pete? In all honesty, like where do you want him to go?
I mean, you got to make it. You got to try. I don't know. Maybe he can't. Maybe he had no way to
I'll
go.
pull an IRAD just wipe out like it's a turf race.
Shit, you know what? At least
create your own hole, right?
At least IRAD gives it a shot sometimes. But I mean, my thing is. Again, I don't know. I'm not a jockey. I'm not trying to tell a jockey how to ride a race, but it just watching it live and even watching the replays, there was just not much aggression there. And it didn't, I mean, even now he's still sort of taking his time.
Well, he's asking. I mean, he's not whipping, but he's asking. I mean, I hear what you're saying.
I'm just saying there was no way to win the race. And to me, if you're on a horse who's, I think, still the best horse in the race overall, then you have to put your horse in position to win. That's all my thought is.
Paul
you knew early vote. Oh, sorry. I was just saying you knew early voting had so much in the tank because he was just cruise control the whole race.
Paul, how much blame do you put on Rosario for this loss?
I put a little. I got to tell you how I have followed his career. I'm cursed by Rosario. I'll tell you that. It's just we all have those guys. We can't win with them. We can't win without them. I've come to acknowledge. I used to say he was the worst really good jockey. I've come to acknowledge he's right at the top of the game. He's won the Eclipse Award. However, I will say I honestly believe that there are times when he is going to do it his way, regardless of what the plan might be and regardless of other circumstances, i.e. the track condition, the way it's playing, etc. Once he did not get that horse out, he was taking that horse back because that's what he does. Now, earlier in the card, he had a tremendous front end ride on Jackson Traveler, whom I also liked. And he can be very good on the front end, so he's versatile. I get it. But it doesn't mean that he can win all the Eclipse Awards. It doesn't mean that he's immune to not a great ride. This was not a great ride. You might want to say it's not a bad ride. Sonny Leone gave Rich Strike a great ride in the Kentucky Derby. Okay, this is an average ride, whether it's Joel Rosario or anyone else. Doesn't mean it was a bad ride, but there's no way he was winning this race from 7th or 6th going into the first turn. I thought early. I mentioned when we thought early voting might go to the Derby. I thought he ran better than it looked in the Wood. He got picked up. Well, that's a slow track. Aqueduct in the winter, we know, is a slow track. It's tough to go all the way. Mo Donegal, ironically, with Rosario, got a great ride that day. Okay. But this was not a great ride. You might want to say it wasn't a bad ride, but it wasn't a great ride.
Kyle, I love this move at the end, by the way, and I don't know if people notice this, but I mean, completely legal. This sort of, we're in NASCAR, and I'm going to make Epicenter come around me just in case he had horse. It's right there. He looks to his left, and he just comes over to the rail and puts Epicenter not in tight, but that's a completely legal move. And if you had early voting, you have to love that move, even though it really had no effect on the end result of the race, though, right, Kyle?
No, but I know you called me right after the race, and we
did.
mentioned that, and we mentioned NASCAR, and it's just the blocking move. No, it's perfect. I mean, he's a horse and a half, or a horse length clear of him. He comes over so he doesn't get brought up the rail, such as a Rich Strike. But I mean, it's a great ride by Jose, noticing Armagnacs going to fly by him for the lead, just being able to reserve and take him at the end. And like I said, and I agree with him. I agree with Paul. It's not a great ride by Rosario, but I wouldn't say it's a bad ride either, getting shut off like that and having to take back to the rail. But I also agree with Pete, playing with the track the way it played. It's just you're not going to win from 6 back, especially into a slow pace as through the 1/4.5 mile.
I want to talk very quickly about a few other horses. Secret Oath, who I didn't like in this race, I actually think ran a little better than people think, because Secret Oath is the 4 here. If you watch what happened early in the race, not bumped a little bit, and it's sort of rank here. I think now here you talk about aggression. Okay, for me, Saya should have used. To me, he should have used and get up into here, guys. I think this was a mistake. Instead, he sort of has a strength. Now, I know the horse is not a front runner, but I still think he could have gotten up into here. Instead, he sort of has a stranglehold and then is about to get pinched right there. Pretty, a little bit of a check. And now Secret Oath is in last. And then on the turn, she did make a move. She did make, maybe a move that sort of that Pete would have preferred Epicenter make. That sort of early sweeping move you'll see on the outside, very similar to the Arkansas Derby, right, guys? Where she makes this move. The problem is it was a slower pace, number one, and number two, these are not Arkansas Derby horses. But you see, Secret Oath did make a little bit of a move. My last question for all you guys is, there's Secret Oath right there, but then she flattens out late. Any thoughts on Secret Oath? Creative Minister ran a good second. Just any other thoughts in general, Pete? And I'm going to show the chart here in just a second.
Actually, I thought it was funny because I thought Secret Oath made it was like they were trying out the move earlier on Ethereal Road because it was sort of a similar move because that was the only horse that technically sort of came from the back, even though when they hit the lane, I think he probably was either in the lead or close to it, which it seemed like that's what they tried to do with her here was get her close and she just couldn't get there. I mean, I liked Creative Minister. I thought he had a shot to run well. He did. I was impressed with him. I think going forward as he gains more experience, he could be something later in the 3-year-old season when those late season races come. So I like him. I mean, Secret Oath, she's great for when she runs against when she goes back to the fillies and she's in the Saratoga races. I mean, she's going to be probably the number one horse there. So I thought she ran well. Again, I just think she's a notch below. She can't get look, she 94, 95, 92. That just seems to be the range that she's in. So I think staying away from the boys from now on is a good idea because I don't think she's going to take that extra jump, at least not this year. But where she is perfect for against the fillies.
Charles B., congratulations. I know everyone knows that I was happy with the result, but it obviously didn't work out for everyone. Here's a name, Roy. Roy, thank you very much for joining the show. I'm not sure I've seen you in the chat before. Appreciate it. Roy, I agree with you, Roy. I love having my co-hosts on because they have such great knowledge and we can all have great knowledge and disagree. I tend to lead towards you, Roy. I think once he got shuffled back, the rush up move just doesn't work. I think he saved ground, which was the best part of the track. Could he have moved a little bit somewhere on the turn, like Pete said? I guess. I just don't know where he was going to go. I just think it was circumstances. Now, Joel might have lost his ride on a real nice horse. I blame Joel a little bit for the start, but I don't blame Joel as much as other people. And it's not because I had early voting, because if Epicenter won, I would have actually benefited from that too for reasons I won't get into. But, I don't think Joel's ride was as bad as it looked. On the left side of the screen, everyone, for those of you not familiar with Formulator, these are the buyers. Early voting, as I talked about in the show last week, I thought was one of the horses that could really take a step up in the buyer. He got a buyer top. Epicenter did what Epicenter did. So, I mean, listen, he ran another 102. If you believe in buyers, he ran a real solid race. Creative Minister ran better than I thought. Kudos to Caleb Keller, who was on with us. I did not like Creative Minister. I mean, he didn't win, so I guess we were both right. But he ran a buyer top of 100 coming off a 2-week layoff. If you believe in the numbers, I don't know, guys. It's hard for me to believe that all those horses increased their buyer. We'll have to see how they come back. I mean, literally every horse in this race in the top 5, increased their buyer. I'm always a bit skeptical when that happens to me. Fenwick, I have no idea what he was doing. Guys, can we talk about the odds? Because we have questions now. So let's get into the questions part of our show. I'm sorry, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do that. We have a lot of questions that people are asking. And one question that came up, and again, if you have any questions now about anything at all, the floor is open for you folks, for you people watching. Again, if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Anchor, please, below the video player, type in your questions, and the 4 of us will be happy to respond the rest of this week. So again, if you are listening to this as a podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Anchor, please type in your questions below the video player. We'd appreciate it. Guys, the odds were crazy. Pete, let's talk first. I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. Again, this is from Twitter, and this is care of Marshall Graham. Now, for those of you that don't know what this is, of course you don't know what I'm talking about because I screwed up. Let's actually show what I want to talk about. Okay, what everyone sees there, these were the odds, Pete, that Marshall Graham, who is a economics professor at Rhodes College, he's a great guy. We've had him on the show. These are what the odds were supposed to be, Pete, based on the doubles from the Black Eyed Susan to the Preakness. Again, for everyone at home that can see this, these are the odds that the odds at post time, what they should have been based on the doubles. What strikes you right away, Pete? And let me read this out for people that are listening. Epicenter 1.1, early voting 3.8 to 1. Secret Oath 4, simplification 7.4 to 1. Creative Investor 9.3 to 1. Skippy Longstocking 24.8 to 1. Armagnac 28.7 to 1. Happy Jack 40.5 to 1. And Fenwick, according to the doubles, should have been 57.3 to 1. Pete, your first thought when you saw this?
Well, I mean, your first thought is, and I think we actually talked about this on one of our Derby pods, was sharper money is in the doubles, especially like Black Eyed Susan doubles, because that's not something that maybe the average player is going to play, or even just a regular double into the Preakness. So the non-sharper or the more commonplace money is going to be on the win bet itself, and that's why you see these skewed odds. And I mean, I think that's all it is. I don't think it's anything more complicated than the rich strike factor. The people saying, "Hey, look at an 80 to 1 shot won the Derby. Let me throw some money on Fenwick." Or my cousins and my dad had money on Happy Jack in real life. That was his horse because my son is Jackson. So, I understand that kind of money, and I think that's exactly what happened. And when you looked at the odds, I mean, I remember even the early odds, and you're going, first of all, Epicenter's a good bet. When he was 6-5, 7-5, he was 9-5 at one point, and then early voting at 5. I mean, those two were just obvious bets at that point when you see that. But I just think it's the Preakness, it's Triple Crown, it's non-sharp money, and the sharp money is more in the doubles.
Paul, I want to address something that Pete said. I'd like you to address it. Let's just hypothetically, let's say Epicenter wins the Derby and you don't have an 80 to 1 shot win the Derby. How much of that would affect what you see on the screen?
Oh, huge. He would have been odds on. Early voting probably would have been closer to where he should have been, and Fenwick would have been closer. Pete's right. To the degree that some of the money that was won by a miracle on Derby Day came back on Preakness Day. Remember the morning line, more important than how the betting on Fenwick went, the morning line was 50 to 1, which is an extremely high morning line and an extremely justified one. So someone who's giving it no thought says, hey, an 80 to 1 shot won a 20-horse race. Why can't a 50 to 1 shot win a 13-horse race? And now all of a sudden, the horse went off at 13 to 1. It is the single most overbet horse I have ever seen in my days following this game.
In Triple Crown, in Triple Crown races, Paul, or any race?
Any race I have ever paid attention to the odds, Fenwick is the most overbet horse that I've ever seen.
And that spans about, 95 years, Paul?
At least. And we've already established I'm the elder statesman, so respect your elders there, Howie.
Yes, sir. Kyle, some of these odds were fairly accurate. I mean, early voting wasn't that far off, but 4 to 1 to 5.7 to 1 is still pretty dramatic. Secret Oath was he was supposed to be. Your thoughts, Kyle? I don't know if you've seen this before, but any other things you want to add to what these guys said?
Yeah, I mean, you just hit exactly what I was going to say. Was you look at the horses during the lower odds spectrum, and their odds don't change so much. It's kind of early voting from 3.8 to 5.7, Secret Oath from 4 to 5. But then you look at it's what happens on the high end of the scale. I mean, I actually agree with Paul. Granted, my length is a lot shorter than his, but to go from
thanks, Kyle. Thanks for reminding everyone, Kyle.
That's not what I meant.
Now we're gonna get into Paul was betting races before.
No.
A twinkle in his parents' eye.
He was betting him in the
we know the road we're going down.
Watching him run around the Coliseum back in the day. Huh?
Hey, Paul, when you were watching races younger, did they have that flag that they dropped like they used to do at Fairmont, Kyle?
Okay.
All right.
Paul, I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh,
I'm
Kyle,
sorry.
hey, I love it.
Paul,
I
we
love
give
it.
you crap for the same reason you guys give me crap, because we care
I
about each
love
other
it.
and love each other.
Oh, I love it.
Go ahead,
No,
Kyle. I think. I don't know. I
But
think.
but I agree with it. I mean, 57.3 odds in the double pool and 13.2 on the win end on the chart right now. That is just astronomical, especially for a horse that ran, I think in the chart it said a 44 buyer his last time out. It's astronomical to think about. And I mean, not only Fenwick, Happy Jack, 40.5 to 1 on the double payout, 11.9 to 1. It's those two alone. I mean, that's what, a 44 point drop, but from Happy Jack, that's a 29 point drop. I mean, it's astronomical to me.
I mean, when I look at these odds on the screen, I think that's pretty much what the odds should have been. I mean, if those were the odds, I would have completely. Actually, I could make the argument we should have been 100 to 1, but that's not going to be the case. So anyway, I just want to throw that out there. I think that's fascinating, guys. I appreciate Marshall Graham for tweeting that out. Guys, we have a lot of questions that are coming up in the chat, and actually, I have a few questions that were sent to me. Let me address questions that were sent to me first, and earlier this week, out of respect to them. And then again, those of you watching, I appreciate it live. Please pour in those questions. And Pete, you actually have the capability of going back and looking at the questions as well. So Pete, if you want to pop up a question that you see, feel free to go ahead and do that if you know how to do that through
Yeah, I do.
StreamYard. Feel free, just give us a heads up that you're going to do that.
Yep.
We have a question. My first question, this comes from Fred R. I've recently been introduced to horse racing. I'm interested in learning how to handicap. The data seems overwhelming. What should I look at first? What should I ignore, etc.? Kyle, I want you to answer this question because you were an Arlington professor and you spoke to people like Fred at the racetrack quite a bit, some of these newbies. And so, Fred, thanks for your question. Kyle, how would you answer that question?
Well, I can tell you that there's three things that I always told. There's two main things I always told people to look at, but the third thing, there's three total. Two things that are very easy for people that are first learning this game is when you're looking at a past performance for a horse, in the top right, there's a box that shows all of the horse's lifetime stats. You can look at how the horse has done in its life, how the horse has done at the track it's racing at today, how it's done at the distance it's running at today. And especially, like you said, at Arlington, being that it was a polytrack synthetic track, it meant so much more to these people. You get horses coming from Hawthorne or Fairmount or wherever they came from that raced at Arlington. Granted, Arlington wasn't, top of the top like it used to be. So, those two tracks are coming from dirt to synthetic. So you like to look at what surface they're running on to see if they do enjoy the surface they're running on. And that's, and it's very simple to read. There's 4 numbers across. First is starts, second is firsts, seconds, and thirds. It's very simple to read. Out of how many starts, how many wins do they have? How many times are they, quote unquote, in the money? It's a very simple stat to read, and especially not only the surface, but the distance as well. This follows the same formula, and it can give you a really good inclination on how the horse likes what they're running at today. And then the third number that I like to point out is if you're looking at DRF, you look at the buyer numbers, and you see, if this horse has the highest number of an 80, you can compare that through the field. You can kind of, compare and contrast these horses and see, who's the quickest and stuff like that. And those are the three simplest things that I pointed out to people that, they really seem to get when they're just first starting.
Thanks, Kyle. I think that's an excellent explanation. Guys, we're just going to have one person answer these questions so we can get through them. But Kyle thought that was well spoken. I'll just put in my 5 seconds of 2 cents, and that is, I think the buyer number is, I guess because I'm a math teacher, but I mean, just look at the bold numbers and average of the last 5 or 6 races, and of course that's not the best way to do it, but that would be the most simplistic way, right? Just look at the buyers. That's what you do to harness racing. Just like average the last 4 or 5 races, and you have at least some idea, right? Some sense of who's live. This question was from Victor R. through an email from me. Will you please include handicapping for Woodbine? I've noticed amazing payouts, even though the base price can be 20 cents for pick 4s, etc. Pete, do you ever bet Woodbine? And if you do, how do you feel about that circuit in general?
Not enough to have a good feel for the circuit, but I'll bet it on, again, I generally follow the big days. So if there's a big day there at Woodbine, I'll bet it. I mean, the one thing I do like is it seems like at least the days I bet it seems like a pretty fair track. It's not like super speed based. You can get a fair ride, you can get a fair run there. So I've always enjoyed handicapping it, but it's not one, it's very sporadic, one big weekend at a time, but nothing where I'm following the circuit to understand everything about the track, the players, the jockeys, the trainers. I don't follow it to that level.
Paul, I'm going to have you take the next question here. I'm going up into our chat. Tanner has a question. Tanner would like to know how you decide who to use as an A and who to use as a B. There's obviously a huge difference there. And I'm assuming, Tanner, you're very familiar with. Actually, if this is the Tanner, I think I know this Tanner. If this is the Tanner, I think it is. Tanner, thanks for joining the show. I believe you partnered up with a gentleman that has been on this show before you're going to hate me, Tanner. I think, is it South Dakota or North Dakota? Sorry, I can't remember which one. I think it's South Dakota, if that's you, Tanner. Paul, do you want to address that, please?
Sure. Yeah, well, I mean, on a basic level, obviously, you're looking for your most likely winners to be A horses, and to understand the A, B.
We lost your sound, Paul.
We lost your sound.
You're
Paul.
using.
Oh, you're back.
It was coming in and out.
Yeah,
I think it's okay now.
Ironically, I had an incoming call from one of my aforementioned superintendents. I told you that was coming.
Do you need to take that, Paul?
I'll write it out. I know what it's about.
Okay, go ahead.
So I think a couple of important points. I think you have to be have to try to be pretty selective with your A's, because that's going to affect your budget the most. Obviously, the more A's you have, you're using, as we know, an all A ticket, and then a ticket with 4 A's, say in a pick 5, and sometimes 3 A's. So on any given ticket, you have at least 3 A's. So if you're going 3 or 4 deep with your A's in every race, it's going to get expensive. Secondly, and I think this is an important point, and I don't do a good job at this, frankly. If there's a horse that you don't really like who's going to be bet, my feeling is if you think he has a good chance to win and you just don't like him, go ahead and use him as an A defensively, but don't use him as a B, because the odds are that your A's are probably going to be of lower odds. And now this horse, you're saying, well, I think they're going to bet him, but I don't like him. Now you're putting say you only have 1 B in the sequence, you're opening the door for that to be a lower odds horse. So, I think the more I play these, and as you know, I am a serial horizontal player. Pete and I, we won't talk about our Friday afternoon Black-Eyed Susan debacle.
I felt so bad for you guys about that.
But, and there was a case where, it was much worse for Pete because he had his, I think, A's and B's alive. I only had my A's alive, and I had.
You guys were so good in the first 4 legs. It's crazy.
Yeah,
anyway, go ahead.
But I think, again, the more I do it, Howard, I think you can't be afraid to get beat by a good horse, and I think that's not just for ABC. That's for any wagering, But in these sequences, how many times are you alive to? Well, it's going to pay $180, and I'm alive to 1 or 2 horses. That means you spent too much to make not enough. Now, Pete and I were alive the other day. We had I think the lowest, Pete, was 1,700 maybe.
Yeah, my lowest was 32 because I had a $1 ticket to the A's and then the top was like 17 grand.
Yeah, and
that's the way you want it to be, though. Like,
right,
again, that's exactly the way you want it to be.
Yeah, like I had one of mine. It was a $10,000 Divine Huntress, who didn't run that badly, by the way.
No.
So I think you gotta be tight with your A's. If you don't like a horse, don't be afraid to pitch him. Or if you feel as if you got to use him defensively, and he has a high likelihood of winning, then you might as well make him an A because you want to keep him alive with your other legs. Yeah. But using him as a B defensively, I don't think is a good idea.
Tanner, there's books written by Steve Christ. He's the one that developed. You can read about
Exotic
the
betting.
ABC.
Read it.
Yeah, exotic betting. Tanner,
Tremendous.
the worst thing you can do is have a horse that pays $4 as a B, because you're spending a lot of money on a very low price. If you really want to take a shot and value your money best, put that horse in a C. I mean, if you don't like a favorite, then you really should put that horse as a C. That's really, otherwise you're wasting a lot of money.
Hey, Howard, can I do an early question that we had right at the beginning?
Go ahead, sure.
Sort of dovetails into. So Michael asked, he had a few thoughts. What are the use of the favorites in verticals, use of alls, and use of singles? I think these are a horizontal question as well. I think it's sort of he mentioned verticals, but I think this is sort of a horizontal question a lot of people have as well. So I don't know if somebody wants to. I don't know if you want to tackle.
You said in verticals is that to use of alls?
No, I think it's three different questions: use of favorites and verticals, use of alls, and use of singles. Yeah.
Sorry, Mike.
He's a math teacher, not an English teacher.
Yeah, not an English teacher, obviously. The numbers.
We won't talk about the fact that I actually was a journalism major, but anyway, that's all right. Wow, and now my screen went blurry. Kyle, you want to handle the first question? We'll just rotate it around real quick.
I mean, and actually, Tom Espinoza actually asked this as well, kind of, when he said, when betting tries based on value, I don't put two lowest odds in first and second. At what odds would you put those horses in first and second? And I think you guys also hit the nail on the head when talking about the horizontals. For me, it's always about creating a value line for myself. And I know we've talked about value line on the show before, but the value line is what you think is the best price that you will bet that horse at, or the worst price you'll bet that horse at, rather.
Yeah.
So, like I said, my value line for early voting, barring all the money that went on Fenwick and stuff, was going to be 7-2. And if he was 7-2 or higher, I was going to bet him and single him in my exotics. And that's the way it was. And that's the way it happened. And we won't talk about that. I fat fingered my trifecta, but it's okay. But I think it all comes down to when you should make a value line for yourself, especially on these big days where all this money can come in. If you think that horse is worth putting in that try at that price, then I think you justify to yourself to throw the favorites in. Like I said, I wheeled a try on Preakness Day where I had early voting on top. I singled him on top just because he was my top pick. I used Epicenter defensively in second and third because I thought he could win the race, but I was fully taxed to early voting. So I was 4-8 in second because I thought the filly could run well as well. And then this actually ties into a second question, use of alls. Again, it ties back to your budget. If I did not like Armagnac at all, I did not like Happy Jack, and I did not like Fenwick. So, and I thought there's no way any of those horses could come in the top three. And
that's what I said about Rich Strike 2 weeks ago.
Well, that's also, to be fair,
I agree with you. Obviously, I'm just having some fun.
No, yeah. I know what you're doing, but yeah, I think if you don't like horses, like you said, take a stand. Don't use them. If they beat you, then so be it. And you turn the page and move on to the next one. You can't be scared of throwing out horses if you don't like them just because you're afraid that they'll beat you.
Michael, let me address the single question. This came up actually on Twitter last month. A little Twitter spat between Andy Serling and Brian Aragoni, both who guys I know pretty well through the podcast. And Brian I've met in person, and Andy I plan on meeting next month. There's no one way to play horizontals and say you have to have a single, Michael. It does depend a lot on your budget. I do try to find a single, but I try to find a single that's not the obvious single. I know there's people on TVG. I know Dave Weaver tries to do that. It's a method. It's talked about as separator. Matt Carruthers, whose father was big on doing that, talks about trying to find that single between 3-1 to 5-1 to really separate yourself. So, Michael, my suggestion is if you want to use a single, do your best to try to find a single that's a bit out of the box. Like, for example, no, I didn't. Well, actually, the podcast pool hit the pick 5 for $2,500, by the way, for $1 this Saturday. So congrats to anyone that's part of the podcast pool. But on the show here Thursday, I singled early voting with my caveman. Now, my caveman didn't hit because who the hell thought Chantal was going to win the first leg? But anyway, That being said, the kind of early voting single is the kind of single that I'm talking about. You should try to find, because if that one hits, you're really going to get paid. Let's go on to the next.
Oh wait, hold on real quick. I was just going to say, but don't be afraid to single. So sometimes you have to single the obvious horse because the obvious,
absolutely.
Like Pizza Bianca the other day was pretty obvious of a horse. So you could get cute and try and beat her, and maybe she wasn't even the best of singles, but there's some where it's such an obvious single, even if everyone's going to have it. Don't get too cute, because if you have good opinions and price opinions in the other legs, that's where that could be your separator, as Howard used. So don't be afraid to do it, but don't just do it because that's the cheapest horse in the sequence or something. Do it because you think there's no way this horse is losing. I'm not going to waste my money doubling up or throwing him out and then throwing a ticket away just for the hell of it.
Well, just for clarification, I'm not just you toss an obvious single.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just saying maybe you single somewhere else. By the way, Bruce, I like Rich Perloff. We'll try to get him on. We got a lot of TVG people. I want to get some people on from Fox and as well, but he's on my list. This question is for Kyle, and Kyle, the reason it's for you, and everyone else will understand why. This was a question that I got from Penn State Scott, who's been on the show. He sent me an email. How do we get new, younger horse players into this game? Because we really need to get those 20s and 30-somethings into the game to keep it vibrant.
I mean, like I said, it's and granted, it's not everyone gets the path as us, where you get a track right nearby where you get to grow up and go there every day. So I think what you're doing, Howard, is a great way to get younger people in the game, because young people like myself, I mean, I spend not only, at work and stuff like that, when I'm on lunch or whatever, I'm watching YouTube, hours and hours upon a day. And especially in the, if, you're going to a derby party or something like that, these videos that will get searched up on YouTube. I feel like podcasts like this stuff on YouTube is a great way to grow the game. And I know I talked about it on the After Derby podcast, and this is kind of, obviously out of our control, but something like Rich Strike winning and getting that story out to people will say, wow, this horse racing thing is kind of cool. And then they come to YouTube, search up horse racing, and then podcasts like this come up. I feel like expanding onto platforms that where, like you said, like the 20-year-olds and stuff like that are using, I feel like is a great way to grow the game. And that's why, this podcast is something that's, so great, is that it can reach that dynamic. And I feel like that's a very good way of looking at it.
Now, Pete, I know, DFS is big, daily fantasy sports are big. There is fantasy horse racing. Do you think it should be explored some more, Pete, and just go sort of more that route? Because I know a lot of the millennials love the DFS.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't do it enough myself, and I love daily fantasy and other sports, and I do think it's a good way. I think maybe the methodology for it could maybe be tweaked a bit, but I think it is a good inroad. I actually have a question for Kyle Quick. So my thought is, the one thing that I think horse racing does a bad job amongst the millions of things they do a bad job at is the sort of the marketing of the nature of, hey, horse races are quick. And people these days have short attention spans. And two things about horse racing that I love that I think they don't market enough is it's quick. It's a quick race. You can make money. You don't have to watch a 3-hour game. You can make money or lose money quick. So the highs and lows are quick. And two, horse racing happens 364 days a year, pretty much. Mm-hmm. And it happens from, I could wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning and there's races. And when I go to bed at night at 2, there's races. I could put TVG on and something's on. I think those two things where it's like, look, no matter what you're doing, what your schedule is, whatever's going on, if it's a random Tuesday, there's races. Let's take advantage of that. Let's make people think, hey, it's quick. The TikTok generation where it's like, I like quick videos. Well, a horse race is a quick video by nature, and it's a quick way to lose or make money. And you don't have to handicap. You can look at a race and say, my name is Kyle and this horse is, Kyle's Mission is running and I'm going to put some money on it. So I think there's things that it doesn't have to be marketed as the grand sport that it is, because I think all the more longer lasting horse players already think of it that way. People today like quick, they like short, they like videos. And I think they could take advantage of that and don't.
Yeah, I mean, if I can definitely respond to that. I mean, that's for me, that's the nail right on the head. That's how I get all my friends who, these past summers loved going to Arlington, and they even went. It's funny to see that I get them to go to Arlington one day, and then all of a sudden they're 3 races in. They've been betting $2 show bets all day. They win one of them, and they're like, "This game's great, I love it." But yeah, I mean, one of my friends, which I still can't believe it to this day, hit a straight trifecta at Arlington for $5, walked out $450 richer, and he's like, "All right, so when we going next week?" I was like, it's just you hit the nail on the head. It's it's a great day out, whether you actually want to care about the races and get into the handicapping, or you just want to go out, have a nice time in the sun, drink some beer, and have a good day. I mean, I feel like you're right that it's not marketed kind of as, just a kind of it's harmful. I want to say harmful, but it's more catered towards the bigger horse players than it is to just the casual fans. And that's going back to Arlington. I feel like that's what they did so well for so many years is, Sundays were family days. And I know Canterbury does that as well. Harping back to that.
Say they do a great.
And you turn small bettors into big bettors by by getting them hooked.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure we all started as small bettors at some point in our lives. So then you'd become more ingrained. Go ahead, Howard.
Guys, if I just may interrupt, as we love talking about horse racing, I'm going to definitively end the show at 9:30 Eastern. If any of you guys that are on the screen here have to leave, feel free, because we're going to be going over the time. We have as many people watching now as we had, all podcasts here. So again, for those of you listening live, we're going to stay until 9:30 Eastern. If you're listening to this, as a replay, we're going to talk for about 23 more minutes. Paul, I'm going to let our wonderful friend Tom Espinoza, we're going to answer this question. I'm going to read it because, of course, we have to keep remembering, guys, a lot of people are just listening at home after the live show. Tom Espinoza's question is, guys, when betting trifectas, based on value, I don't put the 2 lowest odds first and second. My question, at what odds would you put those horses in first and second? Paul?
Well, first of all, I don't play tries that often, although I do occasionally. And
I forgot. I just asked the serial horizontal player about a vertical play.
But
that's okay.
I will say this, and I'll get to the question. I do think I have figured out specifically with trifectas the number one factor, and in my mind, it's field size. I will not consider playing a try with fewer than 8 horses, and usually if there's 8, usually I'm looking for 9 or more. Again, we're back to the math, Howard. There's the more combinations there are, the more chance you have for a payoff. Now, to Tom's question, I don't think it's a great strategy to, just haphazardly eliminate the first and second choice of the favorite from the first 2 spots. I will say it's probably a good idea not to put them together, because if you get the favorite winning and the second favorite running second, you need Rich Strike to run third, and that miracle already happened. So I think it's not a bad idea to split them up, but I think to get value in the try, you need field size, and I think if you do have a lower price on top, which I think is fine, you really need that second place horse to have value as opposed to just looking for the value on the end.
Tom, if I'm going to toot my own horn for a second. Kevin Kilroy, who we've had on the show twice, who does the simulcast feed from Fairgrounds, great guy. Met him for the first time several months ago. He was kind enough. He writes for Twin Spires, and he actually asked me to sort of be a feature on one of his articles. If you look me up, Tom, under like Twin Spires and betting trifectas, I would probably just look up Howard Kravitz trifectas. They'll probably come up. I talked about singling in your trifecta a price horse. So, Tom, let me just throw an option out to you very quickly. Find a horse you like anywhere between, let's say, 5 to 1, 15 to 1. If you really like him, keep him a little bit on top, and mainly back wheel him in second and third. So, in other words, let's say the one horse you like and he's a price. Go a few horses with the one horse with a few horses. Then go with a few horses with the one only. So basically backwheeling or keying a price horse in each spot does not cost a lot of money, and you can really hit some nice trifectas. Some of the best trifectas I've had have been playing like a 6-1 to 15-1 shot that I don't think could win, but keeping that horse in second and third underneath, and then you can actually play it for more than once. You can hit it for $1, $1.50, $2. I just want to throw that out there, Tom, as a possibility. But I agree with Paul. Don't let odds affect you that much. Go with the horses that you like. If you think in an 8-horse field that the even money shot and the 3-1 shot will come first and second, then go with that even money over the 3-1 over 4 or 5 horses, Tom, and try to hit it more than once, because that'll be a $5 bet for $1 if you go 1 by 1 by 5. So
yeah, don't. Sorry, Howard.
Go ahead, Pete. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and
don't
real quick. I was going to say, don't be afraid to up the denominations on a try. People think of tries as 50-cent dollar, $2 bets, but hey, if you really love something, you bet a $20 try where you have one horse, maybe 2 horses, 3 horses. And again, that's a little higher, but maybe you can catch something depending on what the odds are. You could catch something. So just don't be afraid to fool around with the denominations.
All right, Pete, you got this one. The good old hedge question from Dean G. When having 4 horses or so to win the last leg of a pick 5 in a 9-horse field, do you bet some horses you do not have in the final leg to hedge your bets? To hedge or not to hedge? What do you say, Pete?
No, I'm a moron, so I'm not much of a hedger. So I would say I've done it a couple times where if maybe I'll do something where I'll put a horse, not necessarily a win bet, but I'll put that horse on top in an exacta or a trifecta, just in case, and then the horses that I like underneath, just in case that horse wins. Because it's one of those, and I said this to you, Howard, on the phone the other night. I think you always know, it feels like, who the horse is that's going to beat you. You always know who you left off, who you're like, crap, I left this horse off. And I knew it because on Friday, my cousin was like, what do you mean you don't have the 9? I'm like, thanks for the jinx, you clown. And of course, that's who wins the race. But I was like, you knew going in. So I'm not a
Pete,
huge
did you put a win bet on? Did you put a win bet on her or anything? Or you just
No.
and
I would, yeah, that's what I was saying.
Okay.
I'm not one who would put a win bet on a horse, but I might just use them over my horses. But even then, I probably don't. I just sort of ride it out. I have my opinions. If I lose, I lose. If I win, I win.
Kyle and Paul, I'll let you answer, but let me just answer that question real quick. My suggestion, I only hedge. First of all, I only hedge if I'm alive to I'll just throw a number, a 4-digit score, number 1. Number 2, if I like the 1, 2, and 3 horse in the penultimate leg, and let's say I don't have the 4, 5, and 6 in the last leg, I will bet doubles 1, 2, 3 to 4, 5, 6. But what I'm not going to do is use horses I don't have, in this penultimate leg, and horses I don't have. So I'm not going to hedge a hedge. Like, I'm not going to just try to cover every scenario. If I'm wrong twice, then I just suck and I lose. So I will use horses I do have to horses I don't have, and then maybe horses I don't have to horses I do have. Hopefully that makes sense to people out there. But I will never do don't have to don't have, because then you're just wrong. You're just wrong, and now I feel like I'm wasting money. Kyle and Paul, do either one of you want to quickly talk about hedging, and then we'll move on?
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say, is if you trust your strong opinions, you bet your strong opinions. If it's, like you said, if it's going into the last leg, or the second to last leg, rather, then yeah, I mean, I might play a double into, like you said, that one horse that, I thought maybe could win. Maybe it's like a C as a defensive or a B or something like that I don't have. Maybe I'll play that into a double into the horses I like in the last leg or something like that. Or as Pete said, I'm not a win bet hedger either. It's either I play them on top in a try and I play the horses I like underneath, or something along those lines. But I don't see enough value in hedging win bets, especially in the last leg. But for me, I'm like Pete. I trust my strong opinions, and if I'm wrong, then turn the page and so be it. That's just the way I am. Is I bet my strong opinions and I trust my strong opinions.
Paul,
hey Howard, sorry, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I don't hedge much. I look at the math. If I'm alive to 4 horses and it's a 6-horse race and the other 2 are 30-1, then I'm certainly gonna throw a few bucks. But Howard, if I can go backwards, just to prove your point.
Yes, sir.
And you'll be proud of me, Professor Kravitz. When we had Justin Mastari's father, as we jokingly called him, on the show, right. You'll recall he loved a horse called Gregorian Chant in the sprint on Friday, the day before the Derby.
Yes, he did.
I kind of liked them, but of course, when I was handicapping the race, I used them in my horizontal serial wager.
Yeah.
But when the race came up, I said, it's Rosario. It's a turf sprint. He's 10-1. I did exactly, Howard, what you said. I keyed him second and third. Well, the favorite won the race, who I liked, the 10. The rest of me red. And lo and behold, I stumbled into a 40-1 shot running second.
Yeah.
And now you got an $1,140 try by keying a horse second and third. So every once every lunar eclipse, I make a good gambling decision.
But you know what, Paul, that happens, that I'm not saying for you, but in general, that happens more than people think, where a price horse comes in the try underneath and can really, and if you can get him in second, it really pays, because a lot of people throw bombs in for third just because. Pete, did you have something you saw in the chat you wanted to bring up?
No, well, the question you put up real quick, I just wanted to say real fast to Gemini about the people who would like quick, but they don't like the time in between races. That's the beauty of being on your phone. You could bounce from track to track. So so you have to teach them that, because I mean, if I'm sitting at the track, I'll bet whatever race is coming up in front of me. So, which isn't the smartest thing, but.
Tanner wants to know if he should start his own podcast or become another one of the co-hosts. Well, Tanner, you're putting me really on the spot, because if I say you should start your own podcast, now you compete against us. If I say you should become a co-host, now you're taking time away from these guys on the screen. So, Tanner, I'll tell you what, you prove yourself. The more the merrier. We'll get you on the show, Tanner. But thanks for the question.
Don't worry, Tanner. Paul's about 107, so he won't be around too much longer. You can take his spot.
Paul, that wasn't me. That was not me this time, Paul.
It's just a waiting game, Pete.
I mean, Paul's like 3 years older than I am, so I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about.
Howard, tell Tanner the time to start his own podcast would have been before Pete and myself came on board.
Unless he's got
now he's in epicenter land. He's too far behind.
Unless he wants to blow us over.
But you know what, Tanner? If you're lucky enough, you might get some free merch like these guys are going to be getting. So, that would be a positive. Kyle, Gunrunner, has been absolutely ridiculous. I don't know if Roy is suggesting that we should be surprised or not surprised, or just if you just want any quick comment on what Gunrunner is, just unbelievable.
I mean, that's the nature of breeding. It's like, people are so highly touting American Pharaoh, and it's not like his progeny have run horrible, but I mean, we haven't seen another American Pharaoh come out of American Pharaoh. But Gunrunner, who, obviously a really good horse in his own right, but some would say not to the level of American Pharaoh, but now he's producing this progeny. That's the beauty of the game. It's literally, one of the best parts about this entire game. But what I'm interested to see now is going forward is how much his yearlings and his 2-year-olds will go for now at auction, which it's probably just going to be astronomical.
Speaking of breeding, Howard, can we give a shout out to the New York breeding program today at Timonium? Chester and Mary Broman, the best New York breeders of all time, a Bernardini colt today at Timonium, New York bred, $3.55 million.
What?
Yeah, unreal.
New York bred sold for $3.55 today?
It was a bidding war between Amir Zidane, you may have heard of him.
Who?
And West Point Thoroughbreds, and Terry Finley, whom I love, was a great military guy. In the end, didn't quite have the ammunition to take down Mr. Zidane. But $3.55 million, almost twice as much as the previous highest selling horse at this Fasig-Tipton 2-year-old Timonium sale.
Wow. And Paul's talking about West Point Thoroughbreds, by the way, if people don't know. West Point was, wow.
They won a big race with Jackson Travel.
What was the female side,
Yes, I do. Give me a second.
Okay, he'll look that up. Again, we're going to be on for about 10 more minutes, folks. Thanks again for joining the show. Any questions you have for any of us, please put them in the chat. We're getting to as many as we can here. Really appreciate the viewership here tonight. If you have a question, we're literally going to stay on for about 10 more minutes. Tanner's excited to see the merch. So am I, because I haven't developed it yet, but it's coming. It's coming.
Hey, Christine,
Pete.
Thanks for the comment. Too bad I didn't cash any tickets based off of that, because I was betting more horizontals than individuals and was missing that one. But yes, I did feel like the handicapping was great, but the money coming in was not, unfortunately. But thank you.
It's funny. Saturday I felt like I handicapped real well. I talked to Kyle about this. I actually felt like I handicapped very well Saturday. And it's just little things that go my way, like Sugar Ray 2 or whatever in the second race, who was 8-1 morning line, had a brutal beat at like 9-5. The 6-horse, by the way, for those of you who pay attention to my race day blog, if you get my race day blog, there's a horse called Bad to the Bones, who ran in the third race at Pimlico on Saturday for Graham Motion off a layoff. It was the 6-horse, was 12-1 morning line. Got out of the gate about as fast as I would be getting out of the gate these days. Got off very slow. Got a very, very sneaky good effort running fifth, making the only horse doing any closing whatsoever. So remember that name, especially if you bet Mid-Atlantic. Bad to the Bones, who is on my race day blog. I'm not saying because I had it or I suggested it. Go watch the replay for yourself. Was sneaky, sneaky good as a race day blog pick. But anyway, just things didn't really. Mr. Hustle got a 3-wide trip in the turf sprint. The one that Caratori won. Just I had little things that just didn't go my way. But that's the way it goes.
Smoking Jay, huh, Kyle? Smoking Jay was closing into a tough trip. That Caratori, he keeps letting him get away. Unfortunately,
it's we call it the Caratori Smoking Jay rivalry, and it's gonna come back again.
Pete, I threw this question up for you. Penn State Scout wants to know if you got that statistical knowledge in your formative years at Penn State, the Harvard of the Mid-Atlantic.
Hey Scott, if I actually studied in school like I study the horses, I probably would have been a lot better of a student. That's all I'll say.
Howard, that horse is out of a New York bred, also owned and bred by the Bromans, called G Note, who was a Medaglia d'Oro mare.
Was G-Note, was that a sprinter? It must not have been. There's no way.
She was 1 for 11 lifetime, so you won't.
Okay.
Nothing to.
I wonder.
That horse must be a serious looker to get 3.55 out of that breed.
I wonder who Zidane going to have train, being the New York bred. I wonder who he's going to put him to.
That's a fascinating question.
Well, it is a good question, Kyle, but, when you pay that much, he may not be overly concerned with the breeding bonuses in New York. I don't think he's thinking of running on New York Showcase Day on Memorial Day that we have coming up, by the way, which is a great 3 times a year. The New York Breds are showcased day before the Travers, which I'll be there, and Memorial Day, and then again in October. But I think he's still all in with Baffert, Kyle. I think he's just going to ride out that storm.
I can't. Who was talking? Was it? I think Pete. I'm going to have you answer this question first. K2 wants to know if we think turf races offer better value day in and day out. Pete, I think you just mentioned about field sizes, or was that Paul? I'm sorry, about turf racing. That was Paul.
Paul, do you want? I agree. Yeah, we'll let Paul answer this one.
Paul, you want to answer that first? Do you think they're just turf races in general offer better value? And if you think that's the case, Paul, do you think it's because it's the nature of turf racing, or is it because turf racing, I think in general, probably has larger field sizes?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's the number one factor. In general, they do have larger field sizes because there are fewer of them, and fewer opportunities. But if I had to give a one-word answer to this question, I would say yes. I do think there is better value. If you play the New York circuit like I do on a pretty much daily basis, you gotta maneuver Mr. Brown and decide when you want to try to beat him at your own peril. But I would say there's good value there.
Pete?
No, I agree 100%. I think unless you have a big Chad Brown, I feel like there's not as big of favorites either because of the bigger field. So the money gets spread a little bit more. And also I feel like I always get the feeling that turf races generally are a little fairer than dirt races. Dirt races in America have become so much speed favoring these days where I think you get a fairer shake in turf races. So you're not always getting the 8-5 shot who jumps on the lead and runs away. So I enjoy turf races more. I wish there were more of them.
Kyle, we've seen our share of turf races, whether Arlington was, at its best or whether it, came down to the sort of unfortunate ending that it did. As a handicapper and as a Arlington professor for years, how do you feel about turf versus synthetic? And you think there's more value in general with the turf racing?
I mean, if you're just going basic straight Arlington, I mean, it's 1,000% more value. And just like I said, just speaking from Arlington experience, it was always better value turf racing. Not only field sizes, because I mean synthetic races, especially the first few on the card, you'd get 6-horse fields, 5-horse fields, and stuff like that. Granted, the turf crop was always better at Arlington than it was at in the synthetic. Just being how good the Arlington turf course was. But I fully agree with everyone here. I mean, it's not only the bigger field sizes, but I feel, like I said, whether you have, if you don't have one of those monsters in one of those races, i.e. Chad Brown Day is what I used to call it back Arlington Million Day, 2019, when Chad Brown won every single one of the big stakes races. That's when we donned it Chad Brown Day. But if you don't have a monster, I mean, you could definitely get a fair price.
I just wanted to mention, someone put in the comment about value. And I think, Kyle, you explained this well. The value line, you can get value at even money. In fact, I can't recall the horse. One of the biggest win bets I've made all year was a 6-5 shot that I thought should have been 1-5. I couldn't believe I was getting 6-5. I think it was out at San Anita, if I recall, and he won. So value does not mean bet long shots. That means is that, and Matt Beniers talked about this a lot. Please listen to him. He's excellent with value lines. Value line means the horse is a much higher price than you think he should be. It has nothing to do with anyone else. It's just your value line, and that determines you don't have to have a long shot to win. Guys, we are going. I'm just reading. Yeah.
Hey, can I say one before you, Chris?
Yeah. Go ahead. We're going to wrap up the show after your comment. Go ahead.
You responded to Christine she mentioned, give a shout out next time the horse is going to run. Just for people who might not know, and I saw Vale Place mention this, you could use like Equibase Virtual Stable, where if you go to their app or you go to their website, and I'm not touting Equibase, that's just the one that I happen to use, but you could put your horse in and then you'll get emails. You can get emails and it'll say, this horse has been entered in so-and-so race. And then on race day, they'll tell you this horse is racing today. So it's just a good way that if you see hey, that horse got a weird trip, I think I want to keep an eye on that one next time back, especially if it's not one that's going to be, epicenter. You're not going to, know when he's going to run. But if it's one that's like on a random Tuesday that you're not going to know if that horse is running again, throw it in there, because at least then you can keep track of them.
That's how I keep track of my horses nowadays.
All of them. Yeah.
I get, you get enter notifications, you can get race day notifications, you can get stuff like that. Like I said,
every time I'm like, I don't even remember why I stabled them.
Workouts, yeah.
I'm like, I don't even know what happened, why I even have this horse.
Well, I'm going to wrap up the show, guys, with, again, if you're watching live, I'm assuming people have seen this on Twitter. Maybe you saw the beginning of the show. We have a new logo. I just want to show everyone. There is our brand, one of our brand new logos there, with some ugly dude on a horse and two sharp-looking guys to the left and right of the HHH, of the horse there. This is our new HHH Racing Podcast logo. This will be one of our feature logos on merchandise. I had it professionally done. Actually, to be honest, it was a contest with a company, and we had several people working on it. I'm very pleased. I hope you really enjoyed. Feel free to comment how you feel about the new logo. There's other logos as well. I can put a sort of side. That's okay. We'll show it later. There's other logos that are becoming. So thank you very much. Please make sure you subscribe, of course, to the channel. Hit the notification bell. Join the Race Day blog. By the way, the podcast pool is going to start again next week, so please stay in tune Thursday when we have Billy Koch on from Little Red Feather Racing, and we'll talk a little more about the new podcast pool for June, which is going to start very soon. Guys, any closing thoughts about maybe a Belmont thought? Any horses going, not going, as we finish up the show? I'll just leave it open to you guys for 2 more minutes. Anything you want to comment about going forward in the Triple Crown? Guess not. Okay.
I would say, Howard, that the Belmont itself, you're not going to have Epicenter, and you're not going to have Zandon, and you're not going to have early voting. However, that day is now one of the 5 best days of racing on the calendar. The Met Mile, forget about it. Speaker's Corner hooking up with Flightline. Flightline worked lights out the other day.
And Aloha West, Paul. Aloha West.
Aloha West. Yeah,
it's going to be in there. Yep.
He's not going to beat either of those two horses, Howard.
No,
so don't
probably
get too
not.
excited.
Unless they hook
I know
up.
he's got the
Yeah.
Midwest connections, and you're obligated.
I don't like him there as of right now, but anyway.
But no, it is a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We'll be there Friday, Saturday. It's a great. They call it the festival, Belmont Stakes Festival, and it's that Saturday card is just outstanding. So I am very much looking forward to getting down to my third favorite racetrack, beautiful Belmont Park. I love it there.
Don Peps, look out! Here comes Howard.
Don Pepe's Friday night. You're going to meet Mike, the legendary Mike. You'll have your picture taken with him. I have a picture every time I'm there. I actually, in my photos on my phone, I have a separate folder for just Don Pepe photos. That's how many times I've been there. So come one, come all to Belmont Park.
Yeah, Friday is a very underrated, great card, too, with a lot of stake races as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a fun time. Really appreciate all your questions. Please comment below the video player. Do you want to have more of these Q&A sessions? Guys, I'm open to anything. Please look for a survey that I'll be sending out soon. I would really appreciate if you filled out that survey. It'll take a very short amount of time. We want your input. Hope you join us on Thursday with Billy Akach from Little Red Feather Racing. We're going to talk about Santa Anita this upcoming weekend. For Kyle Roscoe, Pete Visco, and Paul Halloran, this has been Howard Kravitz in episode 143 of the HHH Racing Podcast. Thanks for joining us. A little wave to the crowd, everyone, as we say goodbye. We will see you next Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Take care, everyone. Have a great night.